All right, so we are in Deuteronomy 26 today. Parashat Tavo. Parashat Tavo. So verse 1 begins, and we have the phrase there that we have highlighted. Then it shall be when you enter the land. So when you enter, that's the phrase Tavo. Tavo. And that's the name of the portion for this week. That's where it comes from. Now the word key, you remember, that sets up a case. So this, we're talking about mishpatim, right? Case law. So we begin with that, but remember, we're mixing the mishpatim and the chukim, the civil law and the religious, spiritual worship commandments. So, then it shall be when you enter the land and you possess it and live in it, you shall take some of the first of the produce of the ground, which you bring in from your land that the Lord your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name. So we know all of that part in blue is part of the chukim. So we have here the mix, the first case, right? When you enter the land, you shall bring the first fruit. Bringing the first fruit to the temple, that is a chukim. That is, why? Because number one, you're bringing it to the temple, so it has to do with worship. And we're going to see in a few verses that these things are holy. Amen. So they have to do with the chukim, the way to worship God in his holy temple. But look at the mix between these two, right? One is a case when you enter the land. So that's civil case. Is someone going to sue you for not bringing your first fruits? Because this is a case. This is a mishpatim, mishpat. So somebody could actually demand from you, bring it to the judges and say, hey, you didn't bring the first fruit. What's up with that? Now, do we ever see that in the Torah? No, we don't. Actually, we do. Here's the point. The one that brings the lawsuit is God himself. The one who is the judge is God himself. You know someone, I know that you do, you know someone in Scripture that did not bring the first fruit of his crops. Cain. Amen. Was he ever brought to the judges? Hashem. Did he suffer consequences for, let me put it this way, what did he do with the first fruit? What did he do with the first fruit? He probably ate it. He ate it himself. You're not supposed to do that. Why? Because it is holy. So you cannot treat something that is holy in a manner that is not. You will suffer consequences. So this is why we have the combination of a case, right, and a worship commandment. And God himself makes sure that this is accomplished. So you will take some of the produce from the ground, which you bring in from your land that the Lord your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place. Remember the word place? Makom. It's a place of worship. God himself in Judaism is called Makom, the place. And in Revelation he says that there will be no temple in the New Jerusalem. There will be no temple. Because God himself and the Lamb are the temple. He is the temple. He is the place. He is Hamakom. That's why that is a name of God. Hamakom, the place. Very special. Very inside. Lots of inside there. So you bring the first fruit. And then it says, when they bring the first fruit, they are going to make this declaration that we have in verse 3. I declare this day that to the Lord my God that I have entered the land which swore to our fathers to give us. And then the priest shall take the basket in which you put the first fruits from your hand and set it down before the altar of the Lord your God. It is holy. And so then you will say before the Lord your God, you're at the temple, you're at the altar, you're before the Lord, and you will say, then you give a little testimony. Right? My father was a wandering Aramean, and he went down to Egypt and sojourned there, few in number, but there he became a great, mighty, and populous nation, great nation. And the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried to the Lord, the God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our voice and saw our affliction and our toil and our oppression. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and with great terror and with signs and wonders. And he has brought us to this place, to the land. And he has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. This is a lengthy testimony. This is supposed to be the story of us. Personalized. I went into a place of slavery, and the enemy kept me in slavery. Even a 4-year-old child that comes to know the Lord at such a young age, at some point will realize I was a slave to myself, a slave to my flesh, to my own desires. Even if he never committed any heinous crime or any super bad sin, maybe just being selfish with the toys, right? But we have this story that the Lord brought us out of such tremendous slavery. And it says, I brought the first of the produce of the ground, which you, O Lord, have given me. And you shall set it down before the Lord your God and worship before the Lord your God. You and the Levite and the alien who is among you shall rejoice in all the good which the Lord your God has given you and your household. Notice that the good which the Lord has given, the good which the Lord has given you. And that's exactly what it says in the Hebrew. We don't usually speak of the good that somebody gives. We speak of the good that somebody did. Right? Why does he say the good that the Lord has given you? Because it speaks of the first fruits. The first fruits speaks of this huge crops that you receive from him, that he has given you. And so the word good here, we find this word in Genesis 1. 7 times. 7 times the Lord says, and God said that it was good. And God said that it was good. Why? Because he created the land fruitful. He created the land fruitful. He made everything towards making the land fruitful. So when he comes here and he says, for rejoicing all the good which the Lord has given you, all the good is how fruitful the Lord has made you, your field, your cattle, your animals, yourself in children, everything that your hand touches, he has given you fruitfulness.
Amen. Amen.
But I want also to kind of temper that thought, because you may think, wow, well, the Lord is going to fill my bank account and my wallet, and I'm going to drive the latest model, and it's going to be, and if I don't have that, right, according to the televangelist, if I don't have that, maybe I'm not doing something, or maybe I'm not giving enough to their ministry.
One more jet airplane.
One more jet airplane. So, watch this, because it says, let me back up a little. I'm going to back up a little bit, a lot. Down up to the first part of this testimony. Let's see. It's kind of hard to see it on my screen with all these big. Let's see. I'm looking for a place where it says the land of flowing with milk and honey.
Right there. Go back up.
Yeah, there it is, verse 9. See how it worked better when I bring my wife?
We need
Thank you for being here
says, and he has, verse 9, and he has brought us to this place and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, flowing with milk and honey. I want to talk to you about, just briefly, about the land flowing with milk. Number one, the primary source of milk, both then and even now, it's not the cow.
That's correct.
It's actually the goats.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen where the goats feed, where they eat?
Eat everything.
Everything.
They eat everything.
Almost.
If you go to the land of Israel, you see this desert, rocks and dirt. That's the land flowing with milk. And you're like, what?
It doesn't look it.
Because the goat find what to eat among the rocks and in the dirt. The dew of heaven, just a little touch of rain that may fall, say, in the Dead Sea. Those mountains that look so bare. If you get close, the closer you get, you see, well, yeah, there is some kind of vegetation there, some kind of that's what the goats feed on. That's where your milk flows. So we're thinking, when we think of the hand flowing with milk and honey, we think Switzerland. Oh, beautiful pastures, abundant. No. But why? Why is it that the Lord created this land, the most beautiful of all lands? Beautiful in His eyes, because according to the human eye, it is not.
It's still beautiful.
It is beautiful because, and He gives the land, because when He gives the land, He gives Himself. He gives the rain. Without rain, without the dew, even as little as it is, even producing the little that it produces, it creates such a tremendous miracle that you will have a country that is not even 100 years old today, with just 7 million people, feeding over half of Europe.
That's right.
The best fruit in the world. It's not because of the people, and it's not because of the land, it's because of God Himself.
Amen.
Amen.
The blessing, when God blesses, He gives Himself. So He makes, miraculously, He makes this land more fruitful in comparison with any other land. If Switzerland had the blessing of God, there's no telling what would happen. But that's not how God chose to operate. So what I'm trying to get at is that God makes us fruitful. It may not look like we have the biggest, the fattest wallet and the biggest bank account and driving the latest and greatest. But the Lord makes fruitful people like us who have no business even owning what we own, even having what we have. That is His fruitfulness. Even our little congregation, for Him to make us fruitful as we are beginning to see it, this is only possible with the blessing of God.
Amen.
No other explanation.
Do you think in time of Isaiah, however, or Deuteronomy and Exodus, that there was grass where there's really desert? It was that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already called the desert of sin, the desert of the Dead Sea. There's 5 kinds of desert
Yeah.
right in the south of Israel.
Right.
It wasn't. Unfortunately,
Right.
God made it that way on purpose
But I
to
think it's
glorify Himself.
amazing. Up north,
Up north is beautiful, yes, yes. But you still you see around the Galilee, still very desert, yes. All right, verse 12. It says, by now you know the orangey color is the mishpatim, the civil law. The blue color is the chukim, the religious, the spiritual, the worship commandments. So we have a combination here again. It says, when, that's Hebrew key, so we know this is setting up a case. So we're talking about mishpat, we're talking about a civil law. So when you have finished paying all the tithe of your increase, this word's important here. Paying the tax. It actually means tithing the tithe. Tithing the tithe. When you're done, when you finish tithing the tithe, or separating the 10th portion of it. That's really what it means. So you don't give the tithe, you don't even pay the tithe, you just separate the tithe. You tithe the tithe. You separate the 10%. It's good to think in those terms. So when you finish tithing the tithe of your increase in the third year, the year of tithing, it doesn't mean that you don't tithe on the other ones. This is a special year. You're going to do something special with the tithe in the third year. You're going to give it away to people, and you yourself are going to eat some of it too. We'll see it right here. But that's only on the third year. It says, then you shall give it to the Levites, to the Levite, to the stranger, to the orphan, and to the widow. What do they all have in common?
No property.
They own no land. Even the widow, the land belonged to her husband, right? So that's why it says, let the brother marry her. We see it here in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, in order to protect them. And when they're not, God himself is their protector, and they're supposed to get the tithe of the land. So they themselves partake of the fruitfulness of the land, including the Levites who have no inheritance in the land. So that they may eat in your towns and be satisfied. You shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the sacred portion from my house, and also have given it to the Levites and to all these people. I have removed it. I've removed this out of my house. The sacred portion. Look at the word sacred. Kodesh. Kadosh. This is holy. When you get your paycheck and you cash your check and they deposit it in your bank, a part of that money that is in your bank is actually holy. A part of the money that's in your pocket, you're carrying something holy. The best thing to do, just remove it as quickly as you can. Remove it from your house. Give it to the Lord where it belongs, so that you are not found like Cain. If you are tempted to misuse the portion that is holy, and you use it on yourselves, the Lord wanted to bless you so much, and now He can't. It's not that He can't. Of course, He forgives, He's patient, He's teaching us, He's training us. But listen, we open ourselves to influences that we really should not have in our lives.
I want to understand something. If we tithe immediately from whatever Hashem blesses us with, why was it then the third year? So why did we wait 3 years?
No, what it is, you tithe every year from your crops, but the one in the third year you give it to the Levites and to the widows and to the orphans. Yeah, so that's what's different about this third year. And so you say before the Lord, I have removed the sacred portion from my house, and also have given it to the Levites, to the aliens, to the orphans, to all of them. In verse 14, I have not eaten of it while mourning, nor have I removed any of it while I was unclean, nor offered any. Why? Because you're not talking about cash. You're talking about grain. You're talking about wine, olives. So it's okay. You can touch, you can cook when you're unclean. That's not the problem. The problem is when you take the very first fruit, and if you are unclean, you gotta know this is going to the temple, or this is a portion that is holy. Even if I'm going to give it to the aliens and to the widows, this is a portion that is holy. I've got to treat it differently. So I cannot be unclean. So this is why you got to keep coming to the Torah study. Because in January or so, we're going to start studying the book of Leviticus. And then all of this is going to make a whole lot more sense when we go through the reasons why things are holy or not, and how to change that status from clean and unclean and all of those things. You gotta keep coming.
Same admission fee.
Yes, yes. But look at the first phrase. It says, I have not eaten of it while mourning. And remember, there are some commandments talking about mourning. Remember, this is in the blue, so we're talking about chukim, we're talking about worship, commandments about worship. I'm dealing with something that's holy, right? Something that I bring to the temple or I give to the Levites and to the widows, but it's holy. So I didn't eat it. Some of it I get to eat. Some of it says you rejoice with the Levites and the alien and the orphan, and you actually eat of it. So you kill the firstborn, and you have a great party, and you make some cakes with the fruit, and you drink the wine. So you do eat of it. But why mourning? Why the association between mourning and the holy? Well, you are mourning for a person who has died, right?
So it's like you kind of have a connection with the dead.
There is a connection between death and life, because holiness is life. Holiness are levels of infusion of life. And so God is saying, it's okay, you can mourn all day long and you can eat from the portion that is not holy. It's fine. But if you are mourning for a dead one, you cannot partake of the holy things. So you wait for it, or remember those people who came and they said to Moses, hey, we were unclean, we went to a funeral, we wanted to be part of the Passover. And Moses didn't know what to do. Never seen this case. And so he took it to the Lord, and the Lord says, let him have a second Passover the following month. Same everything. Because in the state of having, being in the presence of a corpse, or even, mourning here means these people came from maybe burying a loved one. And in order for them to become clean, they have to go to the temple, be sprinkled with the red heifer water. All of this is involved in that, so that they can then partake of something that is holy. So you see the intricacies and the beauty of knowing the Torah in its details. We get to know God for who He really is, right? It's beautiful. But we're not in Leviticus, so as you know, I'm a Leviticus nerd. So. And look what it says. So I haven't done any of these things, right? Nor have I removed it while I was unclean, nor offered any of it to the dead. I have listened to the voice of the Lord my God. Shema Israel. Listen to the voice. So now we know this is speaking of the commandment. Remember that? Deuteronomy 6 and 6, 7, 8, all the way until 11 is talking about the commandment. How you shall love the Lord your God and hearing His voice. And there's a reference here right there. So it's saying, I love the Lord by observing all these Levitical commandments. This is a way of loving the Lord your God. Verse 15, it says, look down. So I have given my tithe, I've given it to all these people, I helped a lot of people, so I may have a little reason to feel a little proud about myself, right? Well, look what it says here. It says, look down, so now you're going to pray. Look down from your holy habitation from heaven and bless who? Bless me. Bless my water. Bless me with a better house, a better car. Is that what it says?
No.
It's not a selfish thing. It's a community thing. So, and bless your people Israel. Bless Israel because I have given the tithe. And bless the ground which you have given us. so that it will continue to be fruitful, right? A land flowing with milk and honey. And we already talked about what this looks like, right? As you soar to our fathers. All right, so we move on to the next commandment.
That's so important. I just want to re-emphasize
Yes.
that because we live in a me, us, I culture. You know, in individual salvation, that sort of thing. We just don't understand. It's beyond our experience to be like that. You know, we're here for everybody. This is for the whole community. This is for the whole community of God instead of for me.
Good point.
Also, asking God to bless the ground is redeeming the ground itself from the curse that God
That's
gave.
great observation. Great observation. Because part of the curse was you will now serve the ground from which you were taken, right? And the word serve is the same word for worship. So Adam and Eve were supposed to worship God, and as a consequence of the sin, then now they were supposed to serve the ground. So they went from a priestly job to an agricultural job. But then with Noah, the Lord lifted up part of the hardness, of the harshness of agriculture by giving the rain. So the rain helps to ease up the part of the curse. And it allows us to at least travel part way from serving the ground to becoming the priest that we were designed to be in Adam and Eve. Right?
That's very good.
So, yes.
Just a shortcut. I find that the tithe is just one of many ways in which God wants us to have not only a relationship, but a very close relationship with Him.
That's right.
And then become dependent upon the living God.
That's right. That's right. You only know this by experience. When you do it, you see the closeness that you get in your relationship with Him. It's phenomenal. Verse 16. This day the Lord your God commands you to do these statutes and ordinances. You shall therefore be careful to do them with all your heart and with all your soul. What's going on here is that we're in the last section of chapter 26. What's happening in chapter 26 is that the main speech, remember, Deuteronomy is a book of speeches. The first speech went from chapter 1 all the way to the end of chapter 3. And the second, which is the main speech, went from the end of chapter 3, the introduction in the end of chapter 3, all the way to chapter 26. So we finally made it. We're at the end of chapter 26, at the end of the big speech, in which he spoke of two things. Actually, two divisions speaking of three things. The first section of the main speech we saw from chapter 4 all the way to 11 was the commandment, the Shema. Love the Lord your God. Do not forget Him. Worship Him alone. And then beginning in chapter 12 was the second part of the main speech all the way to 26. And in all these chapters we've seen how Moses and God really are weaving in the Chukim and the Mishpatim. The Chukim and the Mishpatim. The civil commandments and the worship commandments. The civil commandments. So you get civil penalties for idol worship. That is a theocracy. That is the blending of the civil commandments and the worship commandments. The Mishpatim, the judgments, and the Chukim, the statutes. So now we are at the end. We've seen it all the way, blending of the two. Now we're at the end. He's about to conclude the main speech, and he will pick up right away in chapter 26 with the following speech. But let's see how he ends this one here. He's going to end it with a summary here. It says, this day the Lord your God commands you to do these statutes and ordinances. Statutes, remember, is the word chok. We give the plural chokim. And the ordinances, mishpat, mishpatim is the plural. So the civil commandments, the mishpatim, and the worship commandments, the statutes, the chukim. So he is summarizing the whole thing. And it says, you shall therefore be careful to do them with all your heart and with all your soul. That's the Shema. So that's the command. We see all three right there, right in that verse. The chukim, the mishpatim, and the commandment. Verse 17. You have today declared the Lord to be your God, and that you would walk in his ways and keep his statutes, his commandments, and his ordinances. Here we go again. And listen to his voice, the commandment. So all three again. It says you have declared today you are going to live according to this book of Devarim, with the chukim, the mishpatim, and the commandment, the Shema. In verse 18, the Lord has today declared, so you declared the Lord is my God, and the Lord has declared you to be his people. What are we talking about here? This is a covenant. Remember that in the book of Devarim, he is giving the commandment, the chukim, and the mishpatim as the content of the covenant that they were supposed to renew. The same covenant that God made with Israel on Sinai, now they're supposed to renew it as they enter the land. And Moses is giving instruction as to how to do it when they enter the land. So he's going over this again. He's saying, remember, you enter into a covenant with God. You said he's going to be your God. God made you promises. He says, you're going to be my people. So the Lord has declared to you to be his people, a treasured possession. Remember, this is Am Segulah. This is the same phrase used in Exodus 19. You will be my special treasure, my treasured possession. So this is harking back because he is instructing Israel to renew this covenant. So treasure possession as he promised you, and that you should keep all his commandments, and that he will set you high above all nations, which he has made for praise, fame, and honor, and that you shall be a consecrated people to the Lord your God, as he has spoken. This is great significance here. Let me ask you this question. When did the Lord make all the nations?
At a time of the Noah. No?
In Genesis.
Pretty close. Pretty close. Tower of Babel.
That's right.
That is when God
Sure.
divided the whole human race into different nations.
Scattering.
So the reason why God chose a nation, prior to that, God would choose individuals. But after he divided the whole earth, all of humanity, into nations, that is when he chose one nation. He chose one man to create a nation out of him. So God decided from that moment on, I am going to deal with all of humanity in the form of nations. And I'm going to pick one nation to be my own, to be my special treasure, to be a people holy to me. This is like the first fruits. It's the same concept. In the first fruits, you take the first thing that ripens and you say, this is God's. So this portion becomes holy. It's supposed to be taken to the temple. It's the same concept as the Levites and the Kohanim, the priests. The whole nation is holy, but I want these in particular to be closer to me. Why? Because I want them to share with the rest of the nation how to be holy.
Amen. Amen.
So why did God choose Israel as a nation and make them holy by drawing them closer to him? So that this one nation can help sanctify all of the other nations.
Amen.
So in this way, he blesses all of them, which is what he told Abraham. I'm going to bless them all. I'm going to, through you, I'm going to bring sanctification to all of the nations.
You know, our tradition says, and I find it so beautiful, that Hashem, blessed be his awesome name, he went to each nation and presented them what he wanted. And they said no. He came to Abraham and he said, I want you to do this. And he says, okay, what else do you have for me? I'll do it. And because he did that, he chose the rest of his descendants forever. I like that.
Yeah, there are some good and some
This is our tradition.
a little bit of pride there.
There's also a joke about that.
There's
We're not discussing.
All right, so we're going to conclude it here. That God takes this nation as a special nation for praise, for fame, for honor, so that the honor may be channeled through the other nations. This word honor, we'll keep reading here. And that you shall be a consecrated people, consecrated, kadosh, a holy people,
Amen.
right? To the Lord your God as he has spoken.
Amen.
So that's the end of of chapter 26, the end of the main speech, the second speech. So he answered. How do we know he answered? Look, verse 27, verse 1. Then Moses and the elders of Israel charged the people, saying, what's going on here? Third person. Third person. Remember this from the beginning of the book? Every time he goes back into writing in third person, he just ended the speech.
That's right.
So the main speech is over. He is ready to now move to the next speech, the next phase, the next theme. Now, if you read chapter 27, then you know it's a long chapter, a lot of good things, but a lot of really not good things.
Yeah.
So this is going to set up, Moses is going to set up here, their covenant renewal with the promises of blessing and the warnings of what would happen if they go and really go against loving the Lord, their God, worshiping idols. The same thing that he spoke in the main speech. The chukim, the mishpatim, and the command. That's the reason why the blessings may stop and the curses would come. So now we're here in verses chapter 28, 27, 28, and halfway to the 29. That's the rest of our portion. We don't have time to get into it. But this is fairly easy. You will see. Let me just show you visually real quick here. When we begin, sorry, I'm going a little fast. In beginning in verse 15, you see how I'm beginning to again color the different commandments. Curse is the man who makes an idol. Obviously, this is against the chukim, so we put it in blue. Curse is he who dishonors his father and mother, because this has to do with authority, so it has to do with God, so it is chok, part of the chukim. But watch this. Curse is he who moves his neighbor's boundary mark. Now, the neighbor can bring a lawsuit. This is a civil case that needs to be resolved by the judges. So you see, even in the blessings and the curses, it is still in the form of, the conditions for it are in the form of chukim and mishpatim. Curse is he who distorts the justice due to an alien, an orphan, and a widow. So we see the blending of the two, even as we continue. So this is what we're doing, the studying this way is to enable you, to equip you, to empower you to be able to read this book with an understanding of what really is going on. For you to be able to discern what is the chukim, what is the mishpatim here in this book. When is it talking about civil cases? When is it talking about commandments for worship, the Hukim. What is it talking about? The commandment, to love the Lord your God, don't forget Him. All of that. So this has been an exercise in equipping ourselves in how to read the Torah. Why? So that we can hear the Holy Spirit in a more accurate way. That's our goal. Because the goal is Shema. Right? We hear the voice when we read the text. That is the key. And then we do. All right?
Good.
Shabbat shalom.